Chapter 16. Around midnight, the Catherine you saw at Wuthering Heights was born, a frail, premature child of 7 months. 2 hours later, their mother passed away, never regaining enough awareness to miss Heathcliff or recognize Edgar. The depth of Edgar's grief at his loss is too painful to dwell upon. The aftermath revealed how profoundly the sorrow affected him. Carries, to me, a significant blow was that he was left without an heir. I lamented as I looked upon the frail orphan, silently cursing old Linton for what was merely natural favoritism, securing his estate for his own daughter rather than his son's child. The poor infant was unwanted, a tiny soul that could have slipped away unnoticed in those first hours, with no one caring in the slightest. We made up for that neglect later, but its beginning was as solitary as its end seemed destined to be. The next morning, bright and cheerful outside, the light gently filtered through the blinds of the quiet room, casting a warm, tender glow over the bed and its occupant. Edgar Linton lay with his head on the pillow, eyes closed. His youthful, fair features were almost as still and lifeless as those of the figure beside him. Yet his stillness was the result of exhausted grief, while hers was one of perfect peace. Her brow was smooth, her eyelids softly shut, her lips curved in a semblance of a smile. No angel in heaven could surpass her beauty. I shared in the infinite calm that enveloped her. My mind had never been in a more sacred state than when I gazed upon that serene image of divine rest. I instinctively repeated the words she had spoken just hours before. Incomparably, beyond and above us all, whether still on earth or now in heaven, her spirit is at home with God. Perhaps it's a unique trait of mine, but I rarely feel anything but peace while keeping vigil in the chamber of death, provided no frantic or despairing mourner is there to share the duty with me. I witness a tranquility that neither earth nor hell can disturb, and I feel assured of the endless, shadowless hereafter, the eternity they have entered, where life stretches infinitely, love is boundless in its empathy, and joy is complete. I noticed then how much self-interest can exist even in a love like Mr. Linton's, as he mourned Catherine's peaceful passing, given the tumultuous and restless life she led. One might question whether she deserved such serenity in the end. In moments of detached reflection, such doubts might arise, but not in the presence of her lifeless form. Her body radiated a calm that seemed to promise the same peace to her spirit. Do you think people like her find happiness in the afterlife, sir? I would give anything to know. I chose not to respond to Mrs. Dean's question, which seemed somewhat unorthodox to me. She continued, "Looking back on Catherine Linton's life, I fear we have little reason to believe she is happy, but we must leave her fate to her Creator." The master appeared to be asleep, so shortly after sunrise, I took the opportunity to leave the room and step outside into the crisp, invigorating air. The servants assumed I was trying to shake off the fatigue of my long vigil. In truth, my main reason was to see Mr. Heathcliff. If he had stayed among the larches all night, he would have heard nothing of the commotion at the Grange, except perhaps the sound of the messenger's horse galloping to Gimmerton. Had he come closer, he might have noticed the flickering lights and the frequent opening and closing of the doors, indicating that something was amiss inside. I wanted desperately to find him. Yet I was afraid. The terrible news had to be delivered, and I yearned to have it done with. But I was at a loss for how to begin. He was nearby, just a few yards deeper into the park, leaning against an old ash tree. His hat was off, and his hair was damp with the dew that had collected on the budding branches, and now fell around him in a gentle patter. He had been standing there for quite some time. I noticed a pair of blackbirds flitting back and forth, scarcely 3 feet away, busy building their nest and treating his presence as if he were nothing more than a piece of wood. They flew off as I approached, and he lifted his eyes to speak. "She's dead," he said. "I didn't need to wait for you to know that. Put your handkerchief away. Don't cry in front of me. Damn you all! She doesn't need your tears." I was crying as much for him as for her. Sometimes we feel pity for those who seem devoid of feeling for themselves or anyone else. When I first looked at his face, I realized he already knew about the tragedy. And a foolish thought crossed my mind that his heart might be softened, and he was praying because his lips moved and his gaze was fixed on the ground. "Yes, she's dead," I replied, stifling my sobs and wiping my cheeks dry. "Gone to heaven, I hope, where we might all join her if we heed the warning and turn from our wicked ways to follow the good." "Did she heed the warning then?" Heathcliff asked, attempting a sneer. "Did she pass away like a saint? Come on, give me the real story. How did—" He tried to say her name but couldn't manage it. Instead, he clamped his mouth shut, waging a silent battle with his inner torment, all the while defying my sympathy with a relentless, fierce stare. "How did she die?" he finally continued, needing, despite his bravado, something to lean on. For after the struggle, he trembled, unable to control it, down to his fingertips. Ay, poor soul, I thought. You have a heart and nerves just like any other man. Why do you insist on hiding them? Your pride can't fool God. You provoke him to twist them until he forces a cry of humility from you. "Peacefully, like a lamb," I replied aloud. She sighed, stretched out like a child waking, and then drifting back to sleep. And 5 minutes later, I felt one faint pulse at her heart, and then nothing more. "And did she ever speak of me?" he asked, hesitating, as if fearing the answer would bring details he couldn't bear to hear. "Her senses never returned. From the moment you left, she recognized no one," I said. "She lies there with a gentle smile, her last thoughts drifting back to the happy days of her youth. Her life ended in a peaceful dream. May she awaken just as kindly in the next world." "May she wake in torment!" he shouted with terrifying intensity, stamping his foot and groaning in a sudden fit of uncontrollable passion. "Why, she's a liar to the end. Where is she? Not there! Not in heaven! Not gone! Where? Oh, you said you didn't care about my suffering, and I have one prayer. I repeat it until my tongue goes numb. Catherine Earnshaw, may you find no rest as long as I live. You said I killed you. Haunt me then." The murdered do haunt their murderers, I believe. I know ghosts have wandered the earth. Be with me always. Take any form. Drive me insane. Just don't leave me in this abyss where I can't find you. Oh, God, it's beyond words. I cannot live without my life. I cannot live without my soul." He slammed his head against the gnarled trunk, lifting his eyes to the sky and howling, not like a man, but like a wild beast, tormented to death with knives and spears. I noticed several splatters of blood on the tree's bark, and both his hand and forehead bore stains. Likely the scene I witnessed was a repeat of others that had unfolded through the night. It didn't stir my pity. It horrified me. Yet I hesitated to leave him like that. But as soon as he regained enough sense, to see me watching, he bellowed for me to go, and I complied. He was beyond my ability to calm or console. Mrs. Linton's funeral was scheduled for the Friday following her death. Until then, her coffin lay uncovered, adorned with flowers and fragrant leaves, in the grand drawing room. Linton spent his days and nights there, a sleepless sentinel, and known only to me. Heathcliff spent his nights outside, equally untouched by rest. I had no interaction with him. Still, I sensed his intent to enter, if possible. On Tuesday, shortly after dark, when my master, exhausted, had to retire for a couple of hours, I went and opened one of the windows, moved by Heathcliff's persistence, to grant him a chance to bid a final farewell to the faded image of his beloved. He seized the opportunity, cautiously and briefly, so cautiously that he made no sound to reveal his presence. In fact, I wouldn't have known he had been there, except for the disarray of the drapery around the corpse's face, and for finding on the floor a curl of light hair, fastened with a silver thread, which, upon inspection, I realized had been taken from a locket around Catherine's neck. Heathcliff had opened the locket and discarded its contents, replacing them with a lock of his own dark hair. I intertwined the two and sealed them together. Mr. Earnshaw was naturally invited to attend his sister's funeral, but he neither sent an excuse nor appeared. Thus, aside from her husband, the mourners consisted entirely of tenants and servants. Isabella was not invited. To the villagers' surprise, Catherine was not buried in the chapel beneath the ornate Linton monument, nor among her own family's graves outside. Her resting place was on a green slope in a secluded corner of the churchyard, where the wall is so low that heath and bilberry plants have crept over from the moor, nearly engulfing it in peat. Her husband now rests beside her, each with a simple headstone above and a plain grey block at their feet to mark their graves.